Well, I bet you didn't see that coming. Trade-ups haven't changed since their introduction in 2013. Their existence has kept the supply of low-tier skins in check and provided a profit opportunity for millions of players. To sustain the rarity that makes them so special, special items have always been excluded from this system. But Valve just changed that, and in the process, nuked the CS2 economy. The following 48 hours welcomed the biggest panic in the history of CS2. The average skin price was down 60 to 70%. There were reports out of China of players committing suicide at the value of these losses, and many players were predicting the end of the CS2 economy. But these reports are overblown. Counterintuitively, they signal Valve's long-term commitment to CS2 and its economy. And I can prove it by showing you three things. The impact to supply of this update, why Valve had to introduce this update, and how we can use historical data to inform our view of this update. Let's start by addressing the panic about knife supply increases. The trade-up system has always required 10 input skins, and this is no accident. If we look at the odds of receiving a given rarity from a case, and divide the rarity of a given tier by the rarity of the tier above it, we can get the relative rarity ratio. To then get the number of input skins required, we simply multiply this value by 2. For all skin tiers, this relative rarity ratio happens to be 5. But what if we now add special items? In this case, the relative rarity ratio is only 2.5. Using our previous formula, that gets us 5 coverts required for each knife trade-up. While there was a lot of panic, Valve has actually kept the trade-up system completely consistent with the way it has worked in the past. So what's the impact to supply of special items? Well, if we consider how much knife supply would increase if we trade up all the skins to special items, we can work out the effective knife supply increase. In the case of mil-specs, we'd need 5 coverts, which would each need 10 classifieds, which would each need 10 restricteds, which would each need 10 mil-specs to trade up to, for a total of 5,000 mil-spec skins. Taking our mil-spec rarity and dividing by 5,000 gives an effective drop rate increase for special items, in this case 0.016%. Doing the same for all rarities gives us these numbers. Summing across all rarities gives us a 0.24% increase in the drop rate for knives. Adding this to the previous drop rate of 0.26% gives us a 0.5% drop rate if all skins are traded up to knives. But this won't happen. Prices will increase such that on average, trade-ups will be unprofitable. In reality, only a very small percentage of all skins will actually be traded up to knives. I would estimate only a 10 to 30% increase in the supply of special items. But that's only the impact to supply. What about the impact to prices? This is a chart of the total supply against the price of a sample of mil-spec skins. What we observe is a non-linear relationship between the supply of a skin and its price. A marginal increase in supply decreases the price by a more significant amount. So how much can we expect knife prices to come down by? Given the relatively low explanatory power of this model, it would be unwise to infer too much from it. But we can be quite confident that we will see price drops to special items, and that price drop might be more than you would have expected. That covers the supply impact. Now, let's dive into the logic to see why Valve would want to introduce this update. Before we discuss the real reason Valve introduced this update, I wanted to address some of the community's speculation. I've seen widespread reporting of a number of people in the community that seem to believe that there is a hidden reason that Valve would want to introduce this update. I want to allay your fears and discuss each of these in general to understand why it's not what Valve is trying to achieve. First, many players think that Valve is trying to capture more of the share of skin transactions through the Steam community market. In reality, long-term revenue would actually decrease due to depressed prices across all skins. Short-term profits would certainly be higher given the short-term volatility and ensuing market panic. But we know Valve has always taken a long-term view of the game, and it would be far simpler and far less damaging to the economy to simply increase the sales fees of the community market. Second, some have speculated that Valve wants to punish market manipulators. Valve already has a history of manually freezing the accounts of bad actors in the past. There are far more targeted ways to punish bad actors, and Valve would simply choose to do those instead. Some players also speculate that Valve is looking to redistribute the wealth throughout the skins economy. This is simply not true. Expensive skins drive player engagement as they want to show off to their friends. It drives unboxings as players want to unbox the most expensive skins and profit. And expensive skins also create publicity, which attracts more players to the game. All of these things are good for Valve, and all of these things are good for the long-term health of CS2. A smaller subset of players think that Valve is trying to make skins more affordable. In reality, even post this update, most desirable skins will remain expensive, with knives and gloves coming down marginally in price, but the upwards pressure on the skins that most of the player base holds would more than offset this decline in the most expensive skins. Lastly, there's been some panic about Valve potentially reintroducing discontinued collections. The damage to player confidence from this move would be huge, and the long-term revenue drop would not be worth the short-term gain for Valve. The real reason has to do with Valve's long-standing move away from loot boxes. I'll only briefly touch on the key developments in this video, but if you want to understand this timeline in more detail, click here to see my video on Genesis terminals. In short, Valve has been trying to devise a system to move away from loot boxes since the introduction of the 2021 Train Collection with Operation Riptide. While this initial experiment was unsuccessful, Valve has tried new things, culminating with the introduction of Genesis terminals in 2025. The problem with these terminals is Valve can't sell knives through them, given their costs would exceed the Steam wallet balance limit. With this new update, Valve can have their cake and eat it too. Valve can sell all skin rarities directly to players and have them trade up for the special items in a set. This will bypass the Steam balance limit and also ensure that in the event of a loot box ban, Valve can simply turn cases into terminals. Now that we know that Valve has introduced this update to allow special items to retain in the game in the event of loot box bans. What many players might not know though, is that Valve has expanded the trade-up system in the past. I want to discuss this example with you and use it to inform our view on what might happen to skin prices next. In 2014, the trade-up contract was extended to work with stat-track weapons. So let's look back at pricing data from this time to see what happened. If we plot the index price of all stat-track skins available at the time of this update, and we group them by rarity, we can observe a few things. As we would expect, the lower rarities were used more in trade-ups, and hence prices were pushed up. With higher rarities having their supply increased, their prices were subsequently pushed down. After the initial hype had subsided, prices of mil-spec and restricted skins found their equilibrium, with the price increase magnitude aligning with the rarity stack. Less rare skins increased in price more as there is more demand for them in trade-ups. A similar scenario will play out for knife trade-ups. All rarities below knives will increase in price, with the movement most significant for the lower rarity tiers. Special items will see a significant drop in price before recovering to an equilibrium level that is somewhere at or slightly below the pre-update prices. Trade-ups will converge to an unprofitable equilibrium, but just as they exist today, there will be opportunities to profit from these trade-ups. Given the higher price of the special items, the profit amount will be higher, but the risk will be significantly higher as well. But the price movements won't be the same between all skins. Take the Doppler knives for example. Their small float cap makes them very easy to get in Factory New. Supply will increase more significantly for these skins, and hence will face more downward price pressure. Player demand for this very desirable finish might offset this to some degree though. More broadly, we will continue to see terminals introduced to the game, and possibly even see a new special item set with an upcoming terminal. Hopefully you now feel more confident about the future of the CS2 economy. If you want to understand more about the Genesis terminal update, feel free to click the video up here.